Life is a spiritual adventure. Is that true? Whether you want it to be or not, is that true? Let's say it together. My life is a spiritual adventure. One more time. My life is a spiritual adventure. You know, sometimes in Unity, we are absolutely here to help you take your life up another notch. Like if you've been working with something or struggling with something, there's times when we really want to support you in giving you more tools to make what you're doing better, faster, easier, whatever it is. And yet there's also other times when the Spirit calls you not to keep doing what you've always done, but to go in a new direction. And the thing that's interesting is when we actually know those moments where we are really called to go in a new direction. And what we tend to want to do is just get better at what we've always done. Right? Have you ever been in that moment in your life where you're working on doing your widgets and the way you do your widgets, and you're building the best widget you know how to build, and you're banging out your widgets like nobody's business, and you really think the problem is that you're not building enough widgets fast enough. And Spirit says that's not the problem at all. You're not supposed to be building widgets anymore. But that's who I am. I'm a widget builder. And the Spirit says, you used to be a widget builder. Now you're going to go in a brand new direction, and you're going to know yourself the way that I've known you from the beginning. One of the things that's interesting for me is that the way we tend to do travel is the way that we tend to do life. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this difference between being a traveler and being a vacationer. Because there's a lot of articles about how to be a better vacationer. You know, how to get the airlines and the best seats and the right time to buy your seats, and how to get the airlines to respond to you when they won't respond to anybody else, and how when like Delta this week, when everything's shut down and thousands of people were stranded, you know, how to get them to respond to you when customer service is going nuts. You know, but there's a point where you realize, oh, this isn't about a vacation for me. This trip is really about me taking a spiritual adventure. Because traveling has always been a part of people's spiritual journey. I mean, people have been taking spiritual pilgrimages from the beginning of time. Because there's something about getting out of what you know that demands that you have a new relationship with God. That when you get out of the little life that you're living, and I don't mean that in any condescending way, but we all have the life that we're living, and we do the life we're living, and then we go on a spiritual pilgrimage, and become a real spiritual traveler, and we have to look at some of our beliefs about how we see the nature of life, and do we really believe that life is here to work for us? Do we really believe that we're going to be supported? Or do we believe that we have to kind of work against the forces of nature to get our needs met? So last week we really looked at what that meant, and I invited you this week to take a trip, right? And I said, I don't care if you take a trip to the grocery store that you don't go to, or a restaurant that you don't usually go to, or even a part of town that you don't usually go to. I invited you to take a trip, not as a vacationer, with the idea that everything's supposed to work for you, but actually as a traveler, as a spiritual traveler. So this week I went to Mrs. White's Golden Rule Restaurant downtown. Fabulous. Right? Fabulous. Went on a Sunday. It's a beautiful soul food restaurant downtown. It's fabulous. And when I walked in, it was obvious that the air conditioner was not working. Right? And I don't know how warm it was on Sunday. It was like 110 or something. And it was warm, right? It was warm. And there was every conceivable fan in the place moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, right? And I had to decide in the first 2 minutes, was I going to stay or was I going to go? Like, you know, and it's like, are you going to be a woozy vacationer or are you going to be a traveler? No, I am a traveler, right? So table, food fabulous, meal fabulous, everything was fabulous, right? And what I realized is even the places in me that have expectations that it's supposed to be a certain way. How many of you are aware that you sometimes have expectations that life is supposed to be exactly the way you think it's supposed to be, even when the universe may not agree with you? Right? That sometimes we're kind of amazed at how much of a prima donna we can be. Anybody else ever amazed at the fact that you can be a little bit of a prima donna? And as a culture, we tend to be a little entitled. And one of the benefits of getting to a new place is you can see that nobody really cares what you think. Right? And that you get to live it in the way that in that culture it's being lived. And it's a fabulous experience, right? So today what we're going to look at is the next level in this journey. And the next level in this journey is what we take with us. Because it's amazing to me how much we think we need when we are traveling, right? So before we go any further, let me get my suitcase. Now, if I could have found a bigger one, I would have gotten it. Right? How many of you, this looks fairly similar to the one that you have at home? Maybe yours is bigger, smaller, but most of us have something that looks somewhat like this, right? And that's why when it comes out on the conveyor belt, we can never tell if it's ours or if it's the other 150 people on that plane, because all of them look somewhat like that, and some of them are just bigger or smaller. And what I want you to see tonight is that this teaches us so much about life. See, we think this is to hold our stuff, right? How many of you think that your suitcase really is there to hold your stuff so that you can get it from wherever you are to wherever you think you're going and back again, right? It's not. The purpose of this beautiful piece of luggage is to minimize any fears that you have ever had. Because the role of this beautiful thing is to make sure that anything that you will ever need is inside of it. And if you do it right, and if it does its job right, you should not be confronted by anything. Right? Because we have a belief in that, right? If I just pack the right things, if all the right clothes, if all the right stuff is in my suitcase, I should not have a feeling on this whole trip. Right? I shouldn't be conflicted. I shouldn't be afraid. I mean, I want you to imagine this as a 50-pound teddy bear that you drag around with you. Because for most of us, that's really what it is. It's a 50-pound teddy bear, and God help the airline if they lose your teddy bear. Because we get a little nuts. Because this is the only thing that we really believe is keeping us safe in a very scary world. And if we didn't pack it, we actually believe that they won't have it. Like, of course there's no AA batteries wherever we're going. Right? They don't have whatever it is that we're going to need. And one of the things I want you to begin to see is that travel takes us to a place where we really have to look at some of our basic beliefs about life. And so what I'd like to do tonight is ask you some questions, 5 of them, just to see where you are in this process. How many of you remember Felix the cat? Did anybody old enough to remember Felix the cat? Felix the cat was fabulous because Felix the cat, he was a cat, right? He was a cat, but he had a bag of tricks, right? You remember his bag of tricks? So anytime that Felix had an issue or a problem or a challenge, he could pull into his magic bag of tricks and pull out literally anything, right? Now imagine you're Felix, and you want your suitcase to be your bag of tricks. And how disappointed it is when it's not there. See, I have had a transformation of luggage. I have been enlightened about luggage, right? How many of you know that when you're flying internationally, they go from 50 to 75 pounds? Literally every airline is at least 75 pounds when you go internationally. Did you know that? So if you're traveling with someone else and you're a guy, the tendency is not only are you responsible for your 75 pounds, but you're responsible for your travel mate's 75 pounds. That means that you're now carrying 150 pounds of luggage. And if you're racing for a train, you're racing with an extra 150 pounds, trying to look like it's not a problem. Right? Or if you have 150 pounds of luggage and you try to stick it in a small European taxi, you're now trying to jam 150 pounds of luggage in a space that was designed for carry-on, right? Or if you're in Venice, you actually are trying to hold the 150 pounds and step into a water taxi without it moving away from you, right? So I had a transformation. The first trip to Europe, we did 150 pounds. I never, ever, unless somebody's carrying my bags for me for the whole trip, I'm never doing that again. Second trip to Europe, everything was in a carry-on. Like a carry-on that went underneath the seat. And it was like a brand new experience. Because it's amazing how much of that 150 pounds we just carried around and never wore. Have you ever got to the end of a trip and half your luggage has never seen the light? I mean, half the clothes in your luggage has never seen the light of day? And then you ask yourself, well, why did I take it? Well, because the answer is usually because I might have needed it. Have you ever said that to yourself? I might have needed it. So the idea of luggage is actually to prevent us from having a fear. And what if we changed our relationship with life? So you ready for the 5 questions? First question. And I'm going to take you all the way down to the most basic level. First question is, are you safe? Are you really safe? Are you safe in life? Are you safe on this trip? Are you safe in this moment? Are you safe? Because what I want you to see is how many times, if you tell yourself the truth, you don't really feel safe. And you really do expect your luggage or things outside of you to make you feel safe. And I would rather have that be an inner process of you coming to a new relationship with life that you get to be profoundly safe from the inside out. Not because you have everything that you might need, but because life would provide it. 2. Do you believe that this trip, this vacation, this adventure, this thing that you're on will work out for you? Because it's really a bigger question. It's asking the question, do you believe that life is going to work for you? And it's amazing how many times where we're not sure if we can actually trust that life is going to work for us, if we're going to win, if we're going to get what we want, if God's really going to provide us with everything that we need. And one of the things I want you to see is that when you don't believe that life is going to work for you, you better make sure you pack right. Because you're now MacGyver. Remember the TV show MacGyver? And MacGyver had to have whatever he needed with the tape or the screwdriver or the knife or the soda can or whatever, and then he could make a muffler or a carburetor or an atomic bomb or whatever he needed in that moment from the stuff that he had around him. And so many of us are trying to pack for the worst case scenario. And what if you're just safe? And what if life works for you? 3. Here's another one. Will you have everything that you need? Not because you're carrying it, but the universe will provide it. What if you'll have everything that you need because God knows what you need even before you do? And if you actually need it, it will be there. 4. If I knew I was safe, would I take this trip, have this experience, or live this life? If I knew I was safe, would I really engage this situation the way I'm doing it, or would I do it radically different? If I knew that I was safe, would I be willing to take more chances, live bigger, have more adventure, trust life more? If I knew that I was safe, what changes would I make in my life? And 5, if I'm going to simplify my life, would I actually take this with me? If I was going to simplify my life, would I actually take this item with me? Or am I just taking it because I'm afraid that I may need it? See, one of the things that Jesus said that just has always made the biggest difference in my life was in Matthew 11:28. He said, "Come to me, all of you that are weary and are carrying a heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burdens are light." See, sometimes we don't notice how much all the stuff in our garage is there to keep us safe until we try to take it, all of it, with us on vacation. And it becomes problematic. So what if tonight you decided that you were safe enough to scale down? Online this week, I read a series of articles about people who've decided only to take 15 items on their trips. 15 items. The challenge is, can you go on a trip with only 15 items? And if you were to take only 15 items, what would you take? And it's kind of a game online, is to see how much you could scale down what you carry so that you could actually carry everything that you're going to take on a trip. And if you only got to take 15 items, what would you take? And the answers are fabulous. One man, his 15 items were 3 pairs of khakis, 3 T-shirts, 3 pairs of underwear, and he carries a bag of $4,000 in $2 bills. And the reason he carries, and this is one of his things, he carries $4,000 in $2 bills because he likes to tip people in $2 bills because he thinks they remember him more. So he carries $4,000 in cash in a Ziploc bag just for tipping on the trip. Right? So, I mean, I'm telling you, right? He carries a laptop and 4 paperback books. 15 items. Anywhere he goes, those 15 items. Another guy carries 2 laptops and a Ziploc bag full of nuts and power bars. A power cord, 4 power cords. I mean, he's got a list of all the things he carries, right? And so I asked online, I asked on Facebook this week, if you could only carry 14 items on your next trip, what 15 items would you take? Responses were fabulous. I've asked people if I could share them, right? So Cinda said, I would take a bathroom bag, a makeup bag, a change of clothes, a laptop, and 9 pairs of shoes. Because clothes you can buy, but you have to have the right shoes, right? Right? Mike said, I love this one. Mike would take 2 laptops, an iPhone, an iPad, headphones, 4 power cords, a portable charger, a bathroom bag, and he would buy more clothes when he got there. Right? So what I want you to begin to see is how much you're carrying with you that you just don't need. And if you actually trusted life, how much would you be willing to carry, have in your life? And what if your next trip, you only got, and looking, some of them are starting to sweat. Like, if on your next trip, you only got to take 15 things. Could you imagine that you could have a fun, enjoyable, wonderful trip with 15 things? And if you only got to take 15 things, what would you take? How many of you have ever heard of the Peace Pilgrim? Anybody ever heard of the Peace Pilgrim? Let's shoot up. Do we have a picture of her? I think we do. There she is. The Peace Pilgrim. If you haven't heard of the Peace Pilgrim, she was born with the name Mildred Lisette Norman. She's an American non-denominational spiritual teacher, mystic, pacifist, vegetarian, peace activist. And in 1952, she became the first woman to walk the entire length of the Appalachian Trail. But starting in January 1st, 1953, in Pasadena, California, she adopted the name Peace Pilgrim and began to walk across the United States. And for the next 28 years, she continually walked across the United States. She's done interviews, she did speaking at colleges, universities, churches. She stopped counting how many miles she walked at 25,000 miles. She wore a blue, you can't see, that's a black and white picture, but her smock that said Peace Pilgrim on the front, and it said on the back it said 25,000 miles for peace. And in her smock, she just carried a toothbrush. She carried no money. She wouldn't ask for food or shelter. She would accept food and shelter if people offered it to her, but she wouldn't ask. She began the privilege. She took a vow that she would continue to be a wanderer until mankind learned to create peace. So she would walk with her toothbrush and her blue smock, and people would buy her clothes and shoes and food and housing, and they would take her in, and she was totally dependent on the world that she walked in. In fact, she was so willing to give everything away that she even gave away her name. And from January 1st, 1953, for 28 years, she just went by Peace Pilgrim. And I don't know how you would do that. Honestly. I don't know how you would just take a toothbrush, lock the door of your house behind you, and walk away with no money. Can you imagine how vulnerable that would be? She depended on the generosity of everyone around her for her to make her way. And that's the thing that most of us are afraid of. If I become that vulnerable, will I really be okay? Will I really be safe? Would the universe, would God, would people take care of me if I was that dependent? And for 28 years, and at least 8 trips across the country, back and forth, the answer was yes. that people took care of her. That she had everything that she needed. And tonight, the challenge that I place before you is, how much of your life are you doing so that you don't have to be vulnerable, but you never really get to experience God being God? Like, there's something about us going all the way into complete vulnerability where we actually get to learn that we can trust God and we can trust life. And what I'm asking tonight is just that you scale it back a little bit. Right? Instead of carrying 2 pieces of luggage and a carry-on and everything else, that you just scale it back a bit and see if God doesn't take care of the details. Come to me, all who are heavy laden, for my way is easy and my yoke is light. Jesus had one outfit and one pair of sandals, and everything that he needed was provided. Maybe we're just going the wrong direction. Because in our culture, more and more seems to be better and better. And yet, we're not always happier when we have more and more. We're actually happier when we go the other direction. And we experience a level of vulnerability that leads to connection, that leads to relationship, that leads to us actually getting to know people that we would never meet. We believe that there's a benefit in being bulletproof. But I'm not so sure that's right. So, are you ready for your homework? No. I clearly heard a no. All right, so here's your homework. I want you to remember this talk. And so this is going to be a homework that you may not get to apply for a while, right? But on your next trip, whether it's a weekend to San Diego or wherever it is, I'm going to invite you to scale it down to 15 things. Just try it, right? Just try it. See if you can scale it down so that everything you take fits in a small carry-on. 15 things. See if those 15 things in any way impact your enjoyment of the trip. See if when you get to San Diego or Vegas or wherever you're going, if they don't have good stuff too. And if you are missing something, I guarantee no matter where you go in the world, they probably have it. Right? And so what if you actually trusted God, trusted life, so that everything that you need would be provided? I trust God. Will you say that with me? I trust God. Let's say it like we mean it and like we're happy about it. I trust God. One more time. I trust God. Let's pray. I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. Spirit, we've been carrying so much stuff. We have a planet with so much stuff. We have houses and apartments filled with so much stuff. What if today we let go? What if today we just trusted you and let it go? And feel the lightness of our spirit returning. It's not mine. I don't need it anymore. I trust life. I trust God. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.